Welcome to the very last section of the OmniFoot website. And in this one, we're going to build a really professional looking footer like this one. So we're going to use this design example from the right side to build a somewhat similar looking footer. So in the first column, we will also have our logo, then some social links and a copyright notice. Then in the second column, we're going to have some contact information, so of the OmniFoot company, and then in the remaining three columns, there will be some additional links. So a bit, again, like here in this design example on the right side. Okay, so 5 columns and a really professional looking footer. And so let's get to work and build this. Okay, and so to mark up this footer in the HTML, we're going to use the footer element for that. And we will put it not inside of the main element, but actually outside of it. So right here. Because remember that the main area of the website is for non-repeated content. And the footer, as well as the header, we might repeat them exactly the same on some other pages that are part of the overall website. And so, yeah, the main part is really only for the part that is specific to this particular web page. Okay, so again, the footer and the header, they might be repeated on other pages in case there were some. And so they are not the main content of the page. So giving it the class of footer here, just like I did in the header. And then here we will also want some centered container. And so for that we use, of course, our container class. And let's also use a grid. And I think right now we don't have a grid yet with 5 columns. So let's create that really fast here. And of course, that's really simple. We just copy this and change this to 5 and this to 5. And so just like this, we now created a grid which has 5 equally sized columns. Okay. So this first one here is going to have the logo and the copyright notice and all that. So let's call this one here the logo column. So let's just write that here. Then the second one is for the address. So I'm calling that one address column. And I'm not sure yet if I will even need these class names. But many times as I write the HTML, I try to immediately name it. So let's just take a look at our content here again. So yeah, so here is that contact information. So we will write the address, the phone number, and the email. So right here into the address column that we just created. And these social links here, they will go into the first column. Then finally, we have also some additional links right here. So this huge list here. And so let's try to separate this into some different basically topics. So create account, sign in, and these applications. And so I think that we can say that these links here are all about the user's account. So I'm going to basically create a subsection of the navigation called account. Then these 4 here are about the OmniFoot company itself. So basically a page describing what OmniFoot is, then OmniFoot for business and partners and careers. And then finally, here are some resources, for example, where the user can find a directory or some other help. So here is where we will have now 3 columns, 1 for each of these sub-navigations, let's say. So let's create 3 more columns here. And I'm going to call this one here a nav call. And actually, since this will be basically a navigation, let's use the nav element here. And then 2 more. So 2 and 3. So this is just so we can see something on our page right now. But before we go check that out, let's, as always, add some padding here to that section first. So copying that once more, then footer, and here footer as well. So let's see. And there it is. So there are our 5 equally sized columns. So let's now add the actual content here very quick. So here we want the logo, and so let's actually get that from the header. So I'm going to go all the way up, and I noticed we have together here written over 600 lines of HTML code. So that's really a great job. But anyway, here is that logo. But before I copy this, let me actually wrap it into a link. So into an anchor tag, which is something that we do all the time with logos in the header. And so this will be so that when we click that logo, we will go back to the top. And this is something that we will implement a little bit later. So for now, let's just say nothing here. So going nowhere. And yeah, let's just check this out here in the top now. And you see it looks exactly the same, but it is now a link. And so when we click this, we go basically back to the top, right? And so now we will want the exact same thing also in the footer. So later we will then implement some smooth scrolling functionality, which will happen once the user clicks this logo. All right, here let's just give it a class of footer logo, let's say. But the rest here of the image can stay the same. So we are actually reusing this logo class here because I think that the size of it is also good for the footer. So here, I think this doesn't look too big. And so we can use that exact same class that we also used in the header. So that is basically now reusable. So, well, we could move that class to the general.css file, but let's not do that right now. So instead, what I want to do next here is to add that paragraph. And actually before the paragraph, so between the logo and the paragraph, is where I will want to put these icons for social links. So like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that. But I'm going to leave that for a bit later. So copyright, and then let's just write some standard copyright text here. So copyright, and here let's use yet another HTML entity. So the copy one in this case. So as you can see, it will create this copyright sign. So that looks quite nice. And then let's say 2027. And hopefully by the time you're watching this video, this year is not correct. But we will also fix that later, actually using JavaScript. So I will show you how we can actually very easily keep that year up to date. So just all rights reserved, even though this doesn't mean a lot legally, but it always looks nice, I think. Okay. So again, we're leaving the social links for later. And now let's take care of the address here. All right. So let me grab that here. And so of course we will not just paste it here and leave it like this, but instead we need to wrap it into some elements. But before we do that, let's actually also add some kind of header here to this column. But once more, for that, we will actually not use an H element, but simply a P element like this. So this is not really a new section, so it doesn't deserve basically its own actual heading element. So that would semantically not be really correct. So contact us. And then below that, we can wrap this entire information here into a special HTML element called address. So this element is basically for contact information of the page. So it's exactly what we are looking for here. So contacts. And so now let's wrap each of these here into a paragraph. Now, of course, we will not literally write address here because, well, this is pretty obvious that it is an address. We could use maybe some icon, but even that is not necessary. Okay. Now this phone here is for the next one, which we also don't need. Okay. So let's create one paragraph for each of them. And now here, let me show you something cool. Because here we can now basically make this phone number also a link. So let me grab that here. And then we can create a special kind of link. So we can write tell and then colon and then here the phone number. And the same for the email. And I will then show you soon what this actually does. So here instead of tell, because it's not a telephone number, we can write mail to. So this is now the href, and it's also the text that we want to show up on the page. All right. So let's check that. And well, if we click this now, then since we're on a browser, nothing should happen. Or let me see. Oh, actually it's trying to FaceTime it now, which is basically a way of making a phone call. And if I were to click here on this email, then it's probably going to open up my email program. And you see that it did, and it is trying to write an email to hello@omnifood.com. All right, so that's exactly the href that we defined there. Right? So it opened the email program because of this mail to here, and it opened the phone application basically because of the tell. And so this is not really that helpful, maybe on a computer, but on a phone, when you tap a link that is formatted like this, it will then very easily make a phone call to this number. Now you noticed that these two links here are side by side. So let's add a line break there. And I'm actually not sure if we have done that before. But anyway, the way we manually add a line break is by using the BR element. So that stands simply for break. And so now they will be in two different lines here. Okay. So that looks perfect. And so let's move on to the next column here. So let's grab these 4 here. Yeah, so right here. So let's add here another footer heading. And this one here, remember, we said was about the account. And now let's create the actual navigation. And do you remember how we did that in the header? So we did not simply add a bunch of links one after another, right? But instead, what we did was to structure them nicely using the unordered list. And so let's call this one here the footer navigation. And then in there, of course, a bunch of list elements. And let's put these here. And of course, now inside of these is where we will put the actual links. So again, exactly like we did also in the main navigation that's on top of the page. So this one is for create account. And then let's simply duplicate this a couple of times. Then here is the iOS app, and it's even easier to write it than to copy it. And the Android app. So let's see if that looks correct. And it does indeed. So now we have a nice and structured navigation list right here. And so let's do the same for the other two. So in fact, I will simply copy this entire nav and then replace these two. All right, let's get the next four. So that's the first. Then here is for business. And finally, careers. Oh, and here we also want to change the title to company. All right. Oh, actually, this is what we wanted in this one. So let's grab all of this and move it up there. So I just cut it and paste it here. And now let's get the last three from here. Help center. And of course, the privacy and terms, which are very important on basically most websites out there. And I didn't cut it here. And let's just call this section here the resources. All right, let's go back down and here we go. So that looks nice, except of course for all the formatting, but the content is already here. So all the content except for those social icons that I mentioned before. And so let's now add them here between the logo and that text. So let's do that now. And once more, we can consider that a list of links. And so once again, we will use the unordered list for that. So calling it the social links. And since they are links, let's create again an anchor element. And now we just need some content in this link. So what is that content going to be? Well, we're going to use some icons here for each of the social links. So one for Instagram, I think. So Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So let's actually get that here from IN icons, because these usually have all the social links included. So Instagram, and there we go. So let's click to copy. And so that should now be there. And indeed, it is. So let's just do the same 2 more times. So Facebook, and probably the next one we can already guess. So here actually we can just replace Instagram with Facebook and here with Twitter. That should work. And yeah, those are the 3 we were looking for. And so with this, we finished the content part. So the HTML is written here for our footer, but of course it doesn't look anything like professional yet. And so let's take care of writing the CSS in the next and final lecture of this section.